If you think parenting is just about unconditional love and raising the next generation, congratulations, you've been lied to. Parenting is actually the single most influential financial and psychological event of your entire life, and you had absolutely no say in who ran it. Every money habit you have, every relationship with wealth you carry, every financial decision you make under pressure, traced back almost always to one of these 10 people. Your parents didn't just raise you, they programmed you. And today, we're opening the source code. Here are the 10 types of parents that shaped who you are, how you think about money, and why your bank account looks exactly the way it does right now. The first type is the helicopter drone. They don't just watch over you, they track your cellular activity from low Earth orbit. The helicopter parent treats raising a child like managing a top-secret government operation. They track your location via Find My Friends, review your search history nightly, and treat a B- like a felony offense. You don't have privacy. You have a temporary security clearance that gets revoked without warning. Think Kris Jenner, but instead of managing a billion-dollar empire, they're managing your third-grade science fair project like it's the Manhattan Project. The financial damage? Kids raised by helicopter parents often become adults who can't make a single financial decision without calling someone first. They outsource every major life choice because they were never allowed to make one on their own. You're 25 years old, and they still call to ask if you made it home safely, from the grocery store across the street. The second type is the cool parent. They don't want respect, they want an invite to your pregame. The cool parent is terrified of aging and even more terrified of being called lame. They wear clothing from brands targeted at teenagers, know every TikTok trend, and will happily buy alcohol for your underage party just so your friends think they're chill. They don't set boundaries because boundaries interfere with their aesthetic. Think Regina George's mom from Mean Girls, not a regular mom, a cool mom, who is currently trying to learn how to vape. The financial consequence of growing up with a cool parent is serious. No boundaries in childhood becomes no financial boundaries in adulthood. These are the kids who grow up spending impulsively, lending money to anyone who asks, and saying yes to everything, because nobody ever taught them that no is a complete sentence. The third type is the Tiger CEO. Free time is for people who don't want to get into Harvard. For the Tiger CEO, raising a child is an investment portfolio, and anything below a 4.0 GPA is a market crash. Your entire life is scheduled in 15-minute intervals, violin lessons, SAT prep, coding boot camps, and you're only 7 years old. Think every child star's stage parent combined with a McKinsey consultant running on espresso and broken dreams. You bring home a 98% on an exam, and their immediate response is, "What happened to the other 2%? The Tiger CEO produces two types of adults. The first is a high-earning, deeply anxious overachiever who cannot relax even when they have more than enough money. The second is someone who burned out completely by 22, dropped everything, and now lives in deliberate mediocrity, just to spite their childhood schedule. The fourth type is the iPad pacifier. Why raise your own child when an algorithm can do it for free? The second a toddler makes a sound above 10 decibels, an iPad loaded with cocomelon is glued to their face. These parents have outsourced discipline, emotional regulation, and basic human interaction entirely to YouTube Kids. Go to any restaurant, spot the child staring at a screen so intensely they haven't blinked since the appetizers arrive. The long-term financial damage of the iPad pacifier parent is invisible, but devastating. Children raised on pure dopamine-driven content grow into adults with catastrophically short attention spans who cannot sit with discomfort long enough to build anything. Delayed gratification, the single most important skill in wealth building, was never developed because the screen always arrived before the boredom could teach them anything. The fifth type is the organic hippie. Who needs modern medicine when you have essential oils and raw milk? The organic parent believes anything invented after 1850 is a corporate conspiracy. Screen time is forbidden, sugar is a Class A felony, and every illness can be cured by lavender and good intentions. Your birthday cake is made of sugar-free oat flour and sweet potato icing. Think Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop catalog brought to life in a suburban kitchen. You spent your entire childhood trading kale chips for Gushers at the lunch table, like contraband in a federal prison. The financial pattern from this upbringing is interesting. Organic hippie kids often grow up with genuinely strong values around consumption and waste, but they can also develop an allergic reaction to anything that feels corporate, including investing, financial institutions, and structured wealth building, which can keep them broke for reasons they frame as principles. The sixth type is the emotional guilt tripper. They don't use punishments, they use weaponized disappointment. The guilt tripper never yells at you. Yelling is for amateurs. Instead, they hit you with a long, heavy sigh, look you dead in the eye, and say, "I'm not mad, I'm just sad." They remember every sacrifice they've made since your birth and keep a running ledger in their head to deploy during mild disagreements. Think a classic telenovela character who turns a missed chore into a 3-act tragic play about ungrateful children. You forget to take the chicken out of the freezer, and suddenly you're responsible for their impending midlife crisis. The financial consequence? Guilt tripper kids become adults who give money away compulsively, to family, to friends, to anyone who makes them feel responsible for their pain. They cannot say no to a financial request from someone they love because the guilt is simply too expensive to bear. The seventh type is the drill sergeant. House rules aren't guidelines, they're the Geneva Conventions. The drill sergeant operates the household with strict protocols, zero room for debate, and lights out at 9 p.m. sharp. Bed corners folded at a 45-degree angle. Questioning authority is treated as mutiny. Imagine Gordon Ramsay in a MasterChef kitchen, except instead of overcooked scallops, he's yelling about an unmade bed. You ask for a higher allowance, and they present you with an audited ledger of your cost of living expenses since infancy. Drill sergeant kids actually develop some of the strongest financial foundations of any type on this list: discipline, structure, delayed gratification. But they often carry a complicated relationship with money, where spending feels like a moral failure, and enjoying wealth feels like weakness. They save everything and enjoy nothing. The eighth type is the overworked absent parent. They loved you with everything they had, and they had nothing left. This parent works doubles, worked nights, worked weekends, worked every hour the economy demanded from them, just to keep the lights on and food on the table. They weren't absent because they didn't care. They were absent because the financial system consumed them entirely. You raised yourself in many ways. You figured out dinner, figured out homework, figured out emotions, all while they were somewhere working a shift that would never quite be enough. The complicated financial legacy of the overworked absent parent is a deep, bone-level fear of poverty. A fear so intense it drives children of this type to work obsessively, sometimes past the point of health, because somewhere inside, they never want to be in the position their parent was in. The grind is familiar. Rest feels dangerous. The ninth type is the rich guilt parent. They had money, real money, and they were deeply, visibly uncomfortable about it. They never talked about wealth openly. They hid the family finances like classified government documents. They told you money doesn't matter, while living in a house that very clearly suggested otherwise. They donated generously, lived modestly by choice, and made you feel that wanting financial success was somehow morally suspect. The long-term damage is specific and fascinating. Children of rich guilt parents often sabotage their own financial success unconsciously, because somewhere in their programming, wealth became associated with shame. They earn well, then spend it away. They build something, then burn it down. They were taught, without ever being told directly, that wanting money makes you a bad person. The 10th and final type is the figure-it-out-yourself parent. Survival of the fittest, right inside the comfort of your own living room. This parent took free-range parenting and dialed it to 100. Life is the best teacher, which meant you were cooking your own meals at 6 and doing your own taxes at 15. They were physically present, but emotionally running on autopilot. Think Tom Hanks in Castaway, except the island is your childhood bedroom, and Wilson is a burnt piece of toast you made yourself. You ask for advice on a major life decision, and they shrug and say, "What do you think you should do?" The financial outcome of this upbringing is the most unpredictable of all 10. Some figure-it-out kids become fiercely independent, resourceful, self-made adults who never needed anyone to hand them anything. Others become adults with deep attachment wounds around support and asking for help. People who struggle financially not because they lack skill, but because they never learned that it's okay to need guidance. So here's the uncomfortable final truth. Your parents didn't just raise you. They installed your first operating system. Your relationship with money, with risk, with security, with worthiness, with wealth itself. And most of us are still running that original code decades later, wondering why our finances feel like they belong to someone else's life. The good news? Code can be rewritten. Awareness is the first patch. Comment below, which type of parent raised you, and which financial pattern did they hand you without knowing it? Subscribe to Storynomics, because next week we are breaking down exactly how each of these 10 parenting styles either builds wealth or destroys it, one generation at a time.